to sum it all up. Like, it's almost as if like the level 1 is learning how to stand on your own 2 feet, and level 2 is learning how to walk, and level 3 is forgetting that you even need to know that, and then you can run. And it's so like you lean more into the flow of that energy, the Kundalini energy or Reiki energy, whatever you want to call it, and you become more of a conduit because you learn to let go. You learn to, and indeed, like with my teachings in the master level in particular, and with Hakutan and a lot of the really traditional Japanese perspectives, the point is to arrive at a point where you don't realize that you're even practicing Reiki. Like, there's no symbols, there's no mantras, there's no meditations. You just simply sit in awareness and the arising of the energy. This is what I was talking about in that call previously with the cafe that maybe some of you were on, in the arising of the moment. And by simply being in the moment, then you're just in that energy. Yeah. We're all in that space. Like, we are all Reiki embodied, of course, but to me, the idea of attaining a master certification, I think, is best summed up in the precepts of just for today, I will do my work honestly. You know, like, we have to have studied and practiced at a deep level before we can ever think that we're going to give sessions to other people, because I made this mistake. Like, I was like, level 2, boom, I'm going to give it to other people. That's fine, you can, from traditionally speaking, but for me, there was still too much ego involved. There was still too much Bruce involved. And I needed to deepen the practice and sit Shimpiden like 5 or 6 times and let my ego get clubbed over the head before I was finally like, okay, I get it. I'm just going to hold space and it's going to flow. That takes, there's no other way to do that, in my opinion, but with consistent practice. And one of the ways to ensure that that doesn't happen is just, and I've seen this so many times, I've had people come in, they're like, okay, I've done level 1, I can heal other people, right? And I'm like, no, first off, no, you can't heal anybody. Like, that's not how it works. And second off, we need to have a much deeper conversation here. We can get lost very quickly in the title of Reiki Master. Like, what does that even mean? That doesn't make sense. Like, from an egotistical perspective, that makes a lot of sense. That's like, I've got these certificates and I've done all these types of things or whatever. I mean, if you were to go to Usui Sensei, if he was still alive, and you were to sit by him, and if you were to say, hey, guess what? I'm a Reiki master, he'd be like, oh, okay, cool. Next. Like, this is irrelevant. This is an irrelevant conversation because it's ego. But the idea of Reiki master is that you have studied and practiced and sat with it long enough that you can hopefully detach from the meaning of even being a Reiki master.
This is the Reiki master. This is the embodiment of Reiki Masters, when you can get out of the way. And how you make that journey is it could be very individualistic. And that's why I love teaching with Bruce, because you get both sides. You can get this, like, there's not a right way. It's about what is the best journey for you to get out of your own way, to let this energy move through.
And it's like Yoda said, right? I mean, I said this last time, but it's like, you've got to unlearn what you've learned. And you can only unlearn after you've learned. You can only step away from what you've already learned, right? And that's, you can't surrender to something that you don't yet understand exists in any way. Yeah. There's so many traps in Reiki for our ego. There's so many traps and spaces for us to be like, I am sending energy into this person and I'm healing them and I'm making all these miracles and all that type of stuff. And you know, I remember feeling the energy. I remember feeling in that space and being exhausted from my sessions. And this is fine. It's normal, but we have to step away from all of these things. And that's consistent practice.
Is that oftentimes what I see is level 2 Reiki students going out, starting their practices, and then realize there's a missing piece, or they want more information. They want more education so they can step into their practice even more fully. So even if you're a level 2 with the Reiki practice, good for you. That's fantastic. The world needs Reiki. And when you're ready, you feel called to go further into the Shimpiden level, right? And so we don't want to negate, like, if you're doing level 2 and practicing, that's bad. That's not what this is about. You'll know. Oftentimes my level 2 students know, like, I don't have a big push about, you have to take the level 2 and you have to do the Shimpiden and you have to go, like, you have to keep training with me, because what happens is that when you are ready, Reiki is a calling.
You know, if you're not a Reiki master, if you are, I mean, the meaning of Daikomyo is is the recognition or the understanding of the great white light within all of us, which is essentially turning inward to that chi, inward to our energy and the radiance of that energy. Now, obviously, I can't speak for the teachers that created this and had that initial discussions, but to me, that resonates quite profoundly, that it's almost like, how can we take an experience, in particular one that is maybe a little bit esoteric, and bring it more internal? So now if we're at that level of really deep understanding of Reiki, we feel this arising, we feel the arising of the moment or the Reiki energy. What do we do with that feeling though? And maybe by chanting Daikomyo, Daikomyo, it allows us to flow deeper into that space. And that's what I would suggest Hayashi Sensei is coming from at the beginning. You know, Hayashi's story is very interesting about potentially committing ritualistic suicide because of his refusal to serve in the Navy and all of these types of things. Like there's a really interesting discussion going on. We don't have time to dive into all of that, but for the long of it, I think that, at least in my opinion, it's that bleeding across at that kind of lateral space at the after Mike Usui, and then where it starts to branch downward.